Good evening, colleagues and partners. Welcome to the fourth session of the 2021 Cities on the Frontline Speaker Series, jointly organized by the Resilient Cities Network and the World Bank. This session will focus on the circular economy, increasing urban resilience, and creating employment. My name is Suri Reich. I'm a senior urban specialist at the World Bank, working in the southern eastern regions. Before I hand off the microphone to Lauren to introduce the speakers, I want to remind anyone of the intention and ground rules for the conversation today. The purpose of these global webinars is to have an open and honest learning conversation between practitioners in cities and governments and partners supporting those entities. The calls are not on the record, and we ask that you do not attribute any comments made today to the speakers unless the materials are made available after the call or you have the person's express permission to do so. We are thrilled at the response to the speaker series. We have more than 250 people registered for the call globally. To facilitate this discussion, and as a matter of practicality, we ask that you please use the Q&A function to pose your questions. With that, over to you, Lauren, to introduce our speakers.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Lauren Sorkin from the Resilient Cities Network. And as we start off tonight, I want to recognize that it's exactly 1 year ago that the WHO declared COVID-19 a pandemic. It's been 1 year since we've had the global pandemic. It's been 1 year since we kicked off this series. And cities are still on the front line of action, of response and of recovery. At the Resilient Cities Network and at the World Bank, we knew when we saw the virus moving across the world that we wanted to create a forum to share knowledge. And we are really pleased to continue to share with you despite the ongoing challenges. So as I begin, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you, our cities and all of the partners who are online and working through this continuing challenge. This is a challenge that is anything but linear. Thank you all for continuing to build resilience and for partnering with us in this journey. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about something that is decidedly not linear, but in a much, much more constructive way. And that is the circular economy. We hear so much about the concept of circular economy and circularity, particularly in regard to advancing more sustainable cities and resilience. But what does it really take to set up a circular economy in a city? What are the benefits that can be achieved for people, for the local economy, for cities and regions? And are city-led initiatives or city-based initiatives really scalable in terms of minimizing city waste and reducing emissions from methane and others that are associated with the breakdown of our waste? Tonight, we have two excellent speakers with us to talk about real experiences on the ground. First, we're going to hear from Nuriel Pezarkar, and he is the founder and CEO of NobleExchange. He's going to share with us about waste management in Pune. He is no stranger to industry. He's an innovator who's making food waste into fuels in both Pune and in Bangalore. And he's worked in strategic planning roles in other industry companies, and he has a keen understanding of supply and demand in cities. We're then going to hear from Wilson Merino, who's the executive director of CONQUITO, Economic Promotion Agency. And he's going to share with us about promoting circular economy for an eco-efficient industrial estate in Quito. Aside from this role, Wilson is an international innovator and a collaborator. He has served as a professor of social entrepreneurship and innovation at the University of the Americas. And he also established a foundation in honor of his mother, and it is dedicated to working for a better quality of life for children with cancer. So please join me in welcoming these gentlemen. And Nuriel, I'm going to turn the screen and the microphone over to you to kick us off.
Good evening, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for Resilient Cities for providing this wonderful opportunity and World Bank for this opportunity. A very interesting topic on how circular economy can help develop climate resilient infrastructure in urban cities across the world. Let me straight get into a presentation. Just a moment. So here we go. So what we are looking at really is Pune city for the ones who quickly get a brief on Pune. Located close to Mumbai, about 120 miles from Mumbai. Three big three big sectors in Pune that really make this city a global city. Automobile sector, Detroit of the East, as it's popularly called, some of the largest automotive manufacturing as well as component companies based out of Pune, currently employing about 550,000 people in this industry. Back to back is the information technology and the information technology enabled services business. This is currently employing about 4,500 people in the city. And then Oxford of the East, Pune, educational hub, and currently estimated about 260,000 students from various parts of India as well as the world live in this city. So what this really throws up is an ever-growing population. We're currently scaling about 4.5 million people in the city. It directly connects to prosperity culture, which is eating out, five-star hotels, restaurants, marriage halls. No surprise today that this city generates about 2,000 tons of waste on a daily basis. So on one hand, there's industrialization, urbanization, population growing. On the other hand, we have this huge, humongous challenge of managing waste. Now, interesting insight in this waste is that more than 55% of the waste generated, and we've seen this across urban cities, and that throws unique challenges to town planners and towards building a resilient infrastructure in these cities, is that 55 to 60% of the total waste generated in these cities is organic, which means food waste. Now, mind you, this does not include post-expiry products, and it does not include the wholesale fruit and vegetable markets, which are popularly or normally known as the agricultural produce market committee, where farmers bring in their produce into the city for consumption, and there's waste generated at that level. So what happens with this food waste? It throws up unique challenges. If it's not scientifically managed, there are severe impacts on the environment, air, groundwater, soil, breeding of mosquitoes, flies, rats, rodents, etc. So it really throws the whole city into a very serious challenge, especially on the resilience front. Situations like the current that we are facing, how do we really bounce back when we have these kind of other challenges facing? So here is where a technological intervention and an innovative model that came about in Pune, where a proven, scientifically strong, robust technology like anaerobic digestion. Just to quickly give you an understanding of what anaerobic means, it means processing of organic waste in absence of oxygen, where bacteria and microorganisms break down the solids and convert that into energy. This energy, if let out into unscientific landfills, is pollution, creates huge amount of challenge, greenhouse gas emissions, etc. But however, if it is purified and captured, put into cylinders or put into pipes, this translates or transfers itself from being a challenge to being a resource. So here is a model where about 1,000 tons of food waste from Pune comes into a processing facility. This facility is currently designed to handle 350 tons of food waste, and the plan is to have a decentralized but scaled up model on 3 different corners of the city, so that the waste does not travel through the city to one corner, number one. Number two, energy in the form of gas is available closest to the point of consumption. So wherever there's waste, there's potential of energy. Whenever there is energy, there is the consumption, and the consumption leads or again comes back to generating more waste. So there's a beautiful circular model that's created into 3 pockets of the city. The model here that has been demonstrated on the ground, successfully working with the support of the Petroleum Ministry, the Road Transport Ministry, where the city transport, the buses that are used for city transport today are fueled with the use of compressed biogas, which is 96% purity methane, replacing conventional fossil fuels. So when you look at this model, there are several impacts that really come across. Now the question, when you're generating good quality CBG, why not use it for industry? Why not use it to replace diesel in, let's say, manufacturing units? That comes to the question that why transport? Why transport as a sector, and how this can directly impact or directly lead to creating infrastructure that works better for the city. The waste is generated inside the city. Citizens participate in this movement in a more larger, wholehearted manner if that benefit of processed gas is brought back to the city to benefit the citizens with better, cleaner air, better sustainable transport. So you are motivating citizens to participate, and it converts more than just a solution. It becomes a movement which is by the citizens for the citizens. So transport, just to highlight, as a sector, is contributing of nearly 23% of the total carbon emissions in the world. It accounts for 18% of the total energy consumed in the country today, which is second only to the industrial sector. More than 98% of the energy needs of this sector are currently fulfilled through conventional petroleum products. So there goes another benefit, which is the dependence on imported fossil fuels and energy security for the country, right? Within the transport sector, when you look at the road transport as a sector in urban cities, especially in India, we are seeing contributing more than 87% of the total CO2 equivalent emissions. So here is the big elephant when it comes to the carbon footprint of the city, and this particular sector has the potential that it touches every aspect of the urban city life. So whether you are traveling to office, you are traveling to a friend's house or to a marriage hall, you're going shopping, or goods are coming into the city or traveling out of city, everything is enabled with transport, and it is this transport as a sector that is creating the challenge of environmental pollution and resilience of the city. So demonstrated this on the ground, it has got what we call twin climatic impact and triple social impact. So the triple impact is environment, social, and financial, obviously. The twin climatic impact is interesting because it's one of a kind solution where you are knocking greenhouse gas emissions on two ends. You're taking in the food waste, which otherwise would have been a very serious cause of environmental damage. So you're eliminating the CO2 emissions on landfill, and then you're converting this in the form of compressed biogas, which goes out and replaces chemical, the fossil fuels, which is the second point of climatic impact. A 300-ton plant, a 350-ton plant in Pune is equivalent on an annualized basis a total of about 105,000 tons of CO2 emission. If you really break this down into what impact or what does this really create, it is equivalent of pulling out 50,000 cars from the street for the CO2 emission that we are talking about. When you look at social, obviously there's improvement of social health and sanitation. Like we mentioned earlier, food waste is very high on moisture. It renders even the other technologies of recycling difficult and inefficient because moisture it does not work very well with any other technologies like incineration, etc. Of course, you're generating a huge amount of organized employment in a relatively unorganized sector. We see a lot of scavengers, rat pickers, which work on the streets in the unorganized sectors, open to severe threats from health or sanitation point of view. And these are brought into relatively organized employment. Ensures extended producer responsibility. Like we said earlier, that bulk generation, food waste is generated more outside the house than inside the house. So when star hotels, restaurants, marriage halls, IT parks, modern retail are made more accountable for the waste that they're generating, it definitely helps them to even fulfill their own extended producer responsibility commitments. What this also does, technology, is that after the gas is brought into the society, what is left from the waste is extremely high quality, nutrient rich, organic manure, and nutrient-rich water, which goes back into agriculture and replaces a vast variety of chemical fertilizers. So the food that comes back into the city has better nutrient value. Economic impact, if you really look at it from a city perspective, since waste gets processed and converted into gas, a 5-acre parcel of land in square meters, this will convert to about 20,000 square meters, is sufficient to process this 350 tons waste for the next 20 years. Let's look at a scenario if the waste had to go to the landfills, which it conventionally does, how much would it require if the waste cup keeps going into heaps, and that kind of additional land is freed for more productive use by the city. The second point is that this kind of a solution transfers or transforms the waste liabilities, which are today the cost involved for pickup, transport, disposal, into profit centers, because polluters pay. It's a shared service paid for model. So polluters like 5-star hotels, restaurants, etc., pay for what they generate, and that leads to savings of or on the corporation side. It also reduces the dependency on imported fuels, fossil fuels. And this can be used to replace a wide variety of fuels, including LPG, diesel, and more importantly, like we said earlier, CNG, which is used for the transport purpose. When you bring in rat pickers and scavengers into more formal employment, the kind of social impact that it's creating at the bottom of the pyramid. So this project currently is impacting directly and indirectly about 380 people who have been pulled out from completely unorganized sector and working environment to more formal sector employment, gainfully so. So we are seeing this having the potential to create long-term impact, and that's the appeal. This intervention between private sector and policymakers and local corporations can help create a sustainable, impactful infrastructure that will work well for cities and for nations for many years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nuriel. And I'm going to quickly turn it over to Wilson. As we do, I think you've given us a lot to reflect on, showing us so many different benefits that are possible, and also reframing some of the actors we would think about in our city and what their roles might be. And I think we're going to come back to that in the Q&A. As we transition to Wilson, I will remind everyone you can pop your questions, if you're thinking of them already, for Nuriel, into the chat. And as you go and as you listen to the presentation, please do put your questions there. We'll come to that section after Wilson's presentation. Over to you.
Hola. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's an honor to be part of this panel. Circular economy isn't just about fixing environmental damage. It can bring opportunities and positive impact across industries, sectors, and lives. I will share with you the experience of the city of Quito with this project that we have run during this last year. Faced with the different challenges occurring in the cities in Latin America and the Caribbean, urban growth, inequity, little historical planning, climate change, most of the governments in the region have prepared a specific law for nature hazard management according to the terms of the Sendai Agreement. Cities must create a resilient future for their residents, but won't be enough on their own. The private sectors play an essential role in this construction. In this context, the IDB Foundation, Avina, and 100 Resilient Cities of Rockefeller Foundation launched a regional initiative with the objective of improving urban resilience in Latin America and the Caribbean through the incorporation of private sectors in development and implementation of resilience plans to select cities in the region. This initiative was carried out in 4 cities in Latin America: Quito, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, and Salvador. In the city of Quito, this initiative is part of its resilient strategy, which includes the construction of urban resilience from an economy perspective. It starts from the strengthening of the productive sectors, of the diversification of business line in a responsible way with the environment. This results in the implementation of circular economy process as an alternative. That includes innovation management within the current production and consumption patterns which are attached in a chain of generation value add goods and services with the low environment impact. In order to operationalize this initiative in territory in the year 2018, an international and interinstitutional cooperation agreement was signed between Fundación Avina and CONQUITO. This agreement contemplates the execution of a pilot project called Eco-efficient Industrial Zones that seeks to generate and apply a methodology to create an eco-efficient industrial zone with symbiosis criteria focused on obtaining economic, social, and environment benefits, specifically applied in Ponciano Alto industry zone within the city of Quito. The industrial zone in Ponciano Alto is composed of 8 neighborhoods and contains an industrial clustering of more than 70% of its land. However, in the area, there are medium-high social stratum housing development, schools, and shops. This area covers 11% of all companies in the city of Quito and employs more than 57,000 people. This project seeks to support the creation of a municipal ordinance to achieve management industrial of the industry that are currently in the so-called industrial zones here in Quito. Concentrations of industry in a specific area that in the city of Quito has legal instability in the use of ground and is surrounded by residents due to the execution of the urban area and the limited urban planning. What are the results that we obtained of this project? Through the work carried out from September 2018 to October 2019, guidelines were developed to encourage of transformation of the industrial zone to an eco-efficient zone according to the patriarchal guideline methodology. Sustainable industry parks, it's called PICE, and the analysis of the environmental and social information collected in the sample of companies belonging to the Ponciano Alto industry zone as a case of study. In the stage 1, an awareness process was carried out on the importance of resilience and on the business case of circular economy to business association, to senior management and private and public companies attached to the municipality of Quito. An open call has been set up to generate a selection of companies within Ponciano Alto that participate in the case of study. 7 eco-efficient diagnoses were carried out for the evolution of the resources or cleaner production using the methodology of the United Nations Organization for the Industrial Development, UNIDO, and characterization of the waste of each companies. Based on the results, it was found that the companies have measured actions and good practices toward continuous compliance with social environmental regulations. However, several recommendations related to the storage and chemical substance and hazardous and non-hazardous waste were resigned. Additionally, main opportunities in waste and waste management, as well as energy and end use are referred to in the diagnosis. 49 eco-efficient opportunities were established on waste, raw materials and water, 52 eco-efficient opportunities and electricity saving, and 4 fuel saving opportunities. The coefficient opportunities on waste, raw materials, and water are related to the activities in list below: waste revolution, waste co-processing, recycling waste, waste and waste management, chemical substance management, and change and sustainable raw materials in water saving. In the stage 2, The approach of the City of Quito in foster innovation for resilience was oriented toward generate an analysis of opportunities through eco-efficient and waste diagnosis of companies. In this context, a real problem was defined, which responds to the need of an industrial and interested in solving in which research, development, and innovation processes. For this process, action were articulated with the academy. It is important to mention that although several opportunities were identified in the 7 companies of the pilot, only 2 companies carry out the research generation. This is very important to consider since the top management of companies are still resistant to innovation processes and cautious about sharing their information, which in the most cases is considered sensitive. For that reason, internal and close calls were generated in the university through which proposals were received with the support of teachers, proposals to solve and identify opportunities. In this sense, the following proposals were selected. A proposal for eco-design of packaging and bicycles. After a prototype validation process, the obtained results caused the need to rethink the proposal, and the pivoting processes was generated toward a solution to process bioplastic, covers, and packaging. For 2 companies in the industrial zone, Magic Flavor and Everfloor. Proposal for the removal or the neutralization and tanks contaminated with different substances to reduce their damage. Currently, this undertaken in the prototyping and validation phase. And stage 3, the opportunities identified in each of the companies through eco-efficient diagnosis and waste analysis were adored to generate innovation through research processes. However, thanks to the information survey carried out on a sample of 43 companies within the Ponciano Alto Polígono, 7 opportunities for symbiotic relationships were identified. These opportunities are based on lighting, the joint replacement of the luminary in the companies of the Polígono is proposed as an opportunity. Waste companies should manage their waste jointly. That means they should work within the common waste manager of managers. Empty containers of chemical products, establishment of an environment manager that is in charge of the collection and waste management using methods with a lower environmental impact. Virtual waste and scrap platforms reside the opportunity to create a virtual waste and scrap platform. Boilers, most of the companies in the industrial zone have boilers for steam generation. Because of this, a shared steam system is envisaged between the companies in the industrial zone. The validation of this initiative post-COVID-19 between March and April, the global health crisis significantly affected all the manufacturing and marketing companies in the country. However, there are sectors and have been affected more than others. For example, the metalworking industry has suffered the consequence of this crisis before the resolution are issued, and suspension of working hours because of many of the suppliers of this industry are located in China, South Korea, and in the Asian continent in general, to show a short stage of parts and pieces necessary for the production of their final products. Another consequence of the health emergency was the paralysis of the productive and commercial activities in the country from the second week of March. So it was necessary to analyze the impact of this global pandemic on the industry of Ponciano Alto. For that, digital interviews were organized with managers and plant operatives of the industry with which they work in the first stage of the project. The interviews reflect the following findings. First, product production has been reduced from 60% to 100% in some companies. The least affected is the food industry, since they must continue producing to supply the market. The impact of sales range from 40% to 100% in some companies, and the debt portfolio has increased significantly. Insufficient cash flow and lack of raw materials. 89% of the companies in the industrial zone correspond to industrial activities. 66% of the companies correspond to the following industry: food, textile, and chemical and plastic, with an operating time rather than 10 years. 89% of companies have a medium level of automatization, and the main areas of required automatization are products first, and then sales and administrative activities in the equal measure. Innovation challenge in the Ponciano Alto industry zone, resilient Quito collaborative economic challenge in Ponciano Alto. The challenge was published on October 25 of 2020 on the Cenecit Bank of Ideas platform under the name Quito Resilient Collaborative Economy Challenge in Ponciano Alto. The challenge had 7 finalists proposal with solution in initial development. The winning solution was the technological platform for the creation of a smart business network based on the collaborative and circular economy among the companies in the industrial zone. This solution is in process of experimentation and incubation to validate the business model and the fit that allows generating synergies between companies to share and exchange all the learnings of goods and services in exchange for compensation agreed between companies, win and win. Additionally, these platforms will generate a record mapping and data management for future interventions or identifications of new opportunity. The final stage for the month of May, it is desired to finish the intervention process with the survey of the learned lessons in each phase and the results of the projects incubated during this intervention. This learned lesson will serve to deliver inputs to the Secretary of Economic Development to discuss and design the ordinance of sustainable social industrial harmonizing zones. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, circular economy, how you see, isn't just about fixing environmental damage. It can bring opportunity and positive impact across industry, sectors, and lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wilson and Nuriel, for the very good presentations. They really touch on very different aspects of what the circular economy is about. There was an interesting question coming up in the chat, actually, about costing, and let me pose that question to both of you, which is, there's a lot of talk as there's this big transformation moving from a linear economy to a much more of a circular economy. There's this talk about these very high initial costs that it will take in changing technologies and the like. So what is the different strategies that you have seen in terms of financing the upfront cost in changing technology and additional financing challenges that come into the fore in this transformation? So why don't we start with you, Nuriel, then we'll pass it on to Wilson. Thank you.
Yeah. So initially, yes, there was resistance. We faced some issues with the debt financing of the project, especially in our case in Bangalore, where the project land was granted by the government on a long lease basis. So financial institutions don't recognize that land as an asset, which can be hypothecated. So there are issues when land is owned and belonging to the government and put into a project as an asset. So subsequently, during 2018, when CBG, compressed biogas, was adopted in India as a modern biofuel, after that, the Petroleum Ministry has kicked in a series of reforms which include launching of the sustainable alternate transport fuel program called the SATAR. And that has nudged the Reserve Bank of India to recognize CBG projects as priority sector lending. So publicly owned banks have come forward to fund these projects with long-term project financing with tenures of 15 years, 3-year moratorium, very attractive interest rates. The Ministry for New and Renewable Energy have included CBG projects for capital subsidy to a particular amount, which is dependent on the gas output. So as the industry progressed, we've seen the financing getting far more organized. There are long-term infrastructure funds which are now looking to invest in the sector. There is great momentum from government as well as private enterprises to own and operate these plants on a larger scale now.
Excellent. Very good, interesting. Let's talk about this once we hear from Wilson. Wilson, what can you say about this from where you stand?
If cities are facing very big and challenges, issues, and I believe the key word is collaboration. No? This proposal that we have run here in Quito can happen because the collaboration between the IDB, Foundation Avina, and 100 resilient cities. That's the only way we can finance these type of projects, the collaboration, articulations between the private sector and the public sectors, have a long-term perspective, and establish clearly the KPIs of the project that we can value all the time, and allowed us to make a quick response to the project. So yes, at the end, I believe collaboration is the key word to finance this type of project.
Excellent, very good. There was another thing that came up in the chat, which was quite interesting, Nuriel, more to you on the unemployment, really, on how to formalize the informal waste speaker sector to the more formal one. But I think that question is actually opens a much broader reflection on employment as a whole. And again, as we move to a more economy which is more based on services rather than production, what is the opportunities that you've seen in terms of opening up for new types of employment? And I guess that can go for both of you as well. So why don't we start with Wilson this time, and then we pass it to Nuriel.
Yeah. So we do bring in the informal sector employees into a more formal structure, but this formal structure is through a cooperative society or self-help groups which are formed, and we typically have third-party contractors who administer the functioning of these groups, but then it's made mandatory that each of the member who enrolls into this cooperative society gets a provident fund account. Salaries are paid only through the bank, so everybody is compulsorily having bank accounts. It's linked to the citizenship identification number, the unique number. So there are ways that this can be structured and still be at a slightly arm's length, if I may use the word. So yeah, the self-help group really works very well with this particular level of employees in this system.
Wilson, over to you.
Yes, well, at the end, it's about transform the quality of life of the people. Encourage to transformation of the industrial zone to an eco-efficient zone according to the practical guide methodology. That's what we have done here in Quito. Create all these synergies between different participants and be focused on improving the quality of life of the people. And I believe that's the key part of what we have done here.
And have you seen any changes in the opportunities for employment in the new industries that are being generated as you move towards this circular economy?
Yes, because most of these were unaccounted for, right? I mean, these were rag pickers, scavengers on the street or in the heaps of garbage. trying to make out whatever can be recycled. So yes, these numbers are growing. In India, both the cities, we've seen more of female workers than male. Getting into this, male members still find out other job opportunities, but this works very well.
Very good. Wilson, over to you.
Yes, of course, we have seen better opportunities for the companies that are part of the Ponciano Alto project. This crisis, this COVID crisis that we are facing moves everything. But anyways, we have seen changes in lighting. We have seen changes in waste. We have seen changes in more opportunities of jobs in this industry. So yes, I believe we can see the results. We are going to see more results in the coming months.
Thank you for those answers. As you're probably both aware, this week we started out on Monday. It was International Women's Day, and
Absolutely.
You just mentioned, Nuriel, kind of women's empowerment as part of employment generation and the project that you do. And Wilson, you also spoke a lot to employment generation in across different circular economy sectors. So I wondered if you could both speak to whether you see continued investment in circular economy as a real scalable opportunity for women's empowerment, and if so, how? What are the important things that must be done to ensure that female entrepreneurs, that women's employment is increased through these kinds of initiatives?
Clearly, more training and social awareness. Waste still has a bit of a social taboo. Okay, and we are working towards accepting that this is as normal as any other profession, any other industry that one can gainfully be employed with. So there are issues which are more to do with social attitude that we need to work on. The scale it's not possible to within the same city multiply it by a finite number of times, but each project can support a group. So we are seeing that opportunity that there are groups or cooperative societies that are formed, and then they get attached to each of these projects on the ground. If you look at the same thing from, let's say, agricultural waste perspective, right? Then collection of agricultural waste and making that available as a feedstock to projects, CBG projects. That's a very interesting sector where women who are off the farm work get gainfully employed. So there are challenges from a social acceptance point of view, but we're seeing that opening. And once we have seen a few case studies of women going back, supporting their families, fixed incomes, they get incentives. Then each one has been successful in getting two more into the system. So initially we did face some problems, but as we've gone through the time and we've seen a few cycles go by, it's helping us improve.
Thank you. Is that true in Quito too, Wilson, or are there differences that you would point out?
Maybe only one difference is we need to assure that women are part of the design of the project since the beginning, and they can follow up the project step by step. I believe that's what we have to do. More women on power, more women being part of the design of this type of projects, and only with this type of sensitivity we are gonna have this type of perspective that we are talking about.
So, I just wanted to just go back to one point that you mentioned in your presentation that I thought it was quite interesting, which really has to do with the urban planning of the cities themselves, on kind of like co-locating the facilities next to each other to basically reduce the emissions and the like. So I thought it was kind of interesting that you were thinking in the case of Pune to basically tried to set up 3 decentralized facilities in different parts of town and try to create microeconomic zones, if you will, around those areas to try to reduce the consumption. And I think as we move also into this new reality of low carbon cities and resource efficiency, that really is becoming one of the main ingredients of the circular economy as well. So on top of that, you have the huge problems in many parts of the world, and certainly in India, which is land availability, right?
Absolutely.
So how did you dealt with these things?
See, land availability within the city is always going to be a challenge. I'll give you an example of what we did in Pune. Bangalore, our experience was different. We were granted land for the project, which was within the city limit. In Pune, we had a different issue. City did not have a large tract of land, but there were small portions available. So what we did was we designed a waste receiving and crushing section, which was within the city. It's a small, relatively small plant with just about 10,000 square feet, 1,000 square meter area, where 200 tons of food waste gets delivered. There's secondary screening. It gets crushed. It changes form from solid waste to liquid waste. Liquid waste then it's stored, it falls into an underground tank from where it is pumped into large tankers of 25,000 liter capacity. And this change of form from waste to renewable raw material. The liquid slurry is then carried in the tankers to our processing plant, which is located about 20 miles away, outside the city in an industrial area. So you have to adjust, you have to tweak that a little bit. Our cost of production in Pune would be a bit higher than our cost of production in Bangalore, because Bangalore has the waste receiving and processing section under the same roof. But that much of fine tuning enables to overcome the challenge which you rightly identified, land for use in cities, large tracts. So that's an important challenge, but there was a way that we circumvented this when we faced this challenge in Pune.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the data that you both presented about the benefits, especially the co-benefits. I think, Nuriel, you presented benefits about climate change mitigation. And Wilson, you presented a lot of data about employment and about the different kinds of industries that have come into the zone. Nuriel, did you find it difficult to find the right partners for gathering that data, measuring it, and did you find a good audience for that in your investors and others? Or would you say gathering that was something that was more ahead of your time when you developed this business? And for Wilson, in terms of the data that you collected, there was a lot of data, it seemed, that was collected ex ante or before as you were doing the design. How did you determine the design that you wanted for the economic zone, and what changed or what challenges did you encounter as you went from gathering that information to coming up with a design for the eco-industrial zone?
In fact, the data gathering opened up our minds to the potential, the challenge, the scale of this challenge and the potential of the solution. So we first started with a small boxed solution, and we thought, wow, this is a great solution. We can go to 5-star hotels and say, give us your waste and we'll give you LPG gas in your cylinders, right? But the whole challenge was putting this box in their backyard. Okay, and we came across this consumer mindset, which was, wow, this sounds great, but you know what? Not my core competency, and I don't want waste in my backyard. So why don't you take it? I will pay you something for it. Okay, so from there we started triggering more, detailed working, and as we dwelled deeper, we were supported very strongly by a few environmental groups, which were not really paid for researchers, but people who were passionate and doing environmental activities as over and above their commitment to their professions, etc. So yes, we did constitute. There was, of course, the Confederation of Indian Industry and the Chamber of Commerce locally, which had floated this, and industry had volunteers who came up volunteering for work. So deep dive into data really told us that outside the home is where the food waste is. Inside the home, there are just peels and few leftovers. But cooked food outside the home is wasted a lot. So the whole model was designed to overcome that particular problem, which was thrown up to us after about 1 year of research and study across 5 cities in India.
The main purpose of this project here in the city of Quito is to generate new ventures, new economic development opportunities based on this model of eco-efficient industrial zones, giving up sustainability and scalability. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, this industrial zone in Ponciano Alto is composed of 8 neighborhoods and contain an industrial clustering of more than 70% of its land. However, in this area, there are medium-high social stratums, housing, developments, schools, and shops. This area covers 11% of all companies in the city of Quito and employs more than 57,000 people. The main key of make this project happen is share transparency with the people. No, we need to involve them and make them be part of this project. I believe that's the key of what we have done here in the city of Quito.
There's one element that we haven't spoken yet, which is a main issue in the circular economy, which is consumer behavior. As you again move more towards the circular economy, there's some changes towards towards production and consumption, and consumers tend to have to change their behaviors to consume less, to consume more circular products and the like. So have you noticed any of this? What is kind of like the reaction that you have seen at the society level in terms of the people accepting these new ways of production and consumption coming into the fore? Perhaps we can start with you, Nuriel, and then pass it on to Wilson.
Yeah, I would say that we really haven't seen any change in behavior towards generation of waste. It's assumed that our urban cities are very consuming economies. We love consumption. The companies pump money into advertising to raise our consumption. So consumption, a restriction of consumption or lowering of waste is something that we really haven't seen, to such an extent that we are now saying, all right, waste is a given. Let's focus on how to process. Maybe, and this is still hypothetical, but maybe in the past 12 months, when we all have been kind of confined to more cooking and eating at home and not going out so much, our offices are closed, our restaurants are closed. Maybe it will be interesting to watch this behavior over the next 6-8 months as we come back into our worlds and restaurants and marriage halls and star hotels open up. That would be an interesting behavioral change to watch. But before that, I don't really think that we become conscious. Food is just thrown about as without any thought to it. Just imagine 4.5 million people generating close to 1,000 tons of food waste every day. Right? So if you look at it on a per capita point of view, that's a very large number. So it will be interesting to watch for over the next 6-10 months.
Great, very interesting. Wilson, anything from you on this?
Culture change is a long-term challenge. It's not going to happen from one day to another. Of course, there are positive results, but we still have a long way to go. I believe that we need to pursue. This project is still in phase 1. We need to come out with new ideas the project has to innovate, and we need the people to feel that they are part of it. That's the only way that we're going to see changes in the behavior of the users.
Is it such an excellent point to end on? And I think both you and Nuriel reflected throughout your presentations the importance of bringing people along, and that the future of building circular economy in cities, whether it's in the waste sector or in others, really counts on building the right kinds of businesses, and businesses are run by the right people with the right mindsets. So it is a process that will continue, and I'm so thankful to both of you for sharing your deep experiences and really ongoing experiences. These are live projects that are happening in cities. There were a number of questions in the chat and a number of requests to get in contact with both of you, so we will facilitate those connections after the series. But for now, we do need to bring our session to a close for tonight. Again, I want to thank both Wilson and Nuriel for joining us. Next week, in partnership with the World Bank, Resilient Cities Network will be back with Cities on the Front Line, and our series about 1 year of living in COVID. We will have our Chief Resilience Officer from Milan, Piero Pelissaro, and also our knowledge partners from the University of Manchester. So hopefully we'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time. For tonight, good night from Singapore. Stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye. Buenas noches.
Muchas gracias. Buenas noches.
Muchas gracias. That was it. Bye, Nuriel.